that crowd. They know who it is. They know the name. The next generation, indeed.
Next Gen. That's his nickname.
Well, at least the Browns lost too. Not a pretty day for Steelers Nation. We were supposed to travel well to Houston. We were supposed to show up for TJ, for the Watts. And what an embarrassment that was. 30-6. Before I criticize the Steelers defense, I have to give a shout out to CJ Stroud because he looked like every bit as advertised. Did not look like a rookie at all out there. Completely shredded every single coverage that Terrell Austin showed him. And I'll have to go back to the All-22 to see what those coverages were. Because I'll admit I am a stat slut and I like watching the pass rush, hoping for sacks. I like TJ and Alex getting after it. All day long they were hitting those 20-yarders, 22-yarders, 23-yarders along the sidelines, over the middle of the field. That receiver, Collins, at a certain point, don't you man him, don't you double him up or, pay extra attention to him to make sure that he doesn't keep embarrassing you down after down after down, because that was getting ridiculous. My biggest gripe with Austin would be how he handled Collins and not adjusting to him and paying him more attention. But just, again, CJ Stroud, you see that he is as advertised, and, it's weird that it only takes one game of watching him, and it's possible that you might see one up game and one down game, but it's not hard to tell what he is already. And the fact that we're still wondering if Kenny Pickett can be that for us, maybe that's the answer to the question. You hate to rag on Kenny too much on a day that he got hurt in a potentially serious left knee injury there, but he's repeating the same mistakes. And that interception that he threw today, he's thrown that same interception at least 3 times before. You can live with a guy making mistakes if he's correcting those mistakes and not making them again. When you have to start wondering is when he's making the same mistakes over and over. There were instances where the Steelers defense was that classic bend don't break, and you do like the forcing 3 field goals, but Patrick Peterson getting burned on that deep ball for that late touchdown, getting caught peeking in the backfield, Pat Peek, more like, on that halfback toss, the halfback throw touchdown. They made mention of it in last week's broadcast that he's the oldest starting corner in the NFL, and you're starting to see he's starting to look it. And while I'm on the Steelers secondary, it seems like there's a memo going around the league with the referees to pay a little extra attention to Minka after the rumors of his dirtiness coming out of that Cleveland game. There was the roughing the passer on Jimmy Garoppolo last week against the Raiders. He didn't lower his head at all. It wasn't a forcible contact. He was told that it was a penalty because Garoppolo lowered his helmet, and then the onus is on the defensive player to avoid that helmet contact, that incidental glancing non-forcible helmet contact, which shouldn't have constituted a foul anyway, but that's beside the point. It happened again this week with a pass interference penalty that they called out in the broadcast again. They didn't think was a penalty, and it's rare for broadcasters to speak that bluntly about officiating decisions. As far as the pass rush, TJ and Alex had a couple nice pressures. TJ forced that intentional grounding and the incompletion on the 4th and 1 in the first half there. But I don't think they got home at all. Towards the end, TJ looked totally gassed. He was down on one knee before most of his rushes. They went to the 4-man front so they could let him put his hand in the dirt, probably just because he was tired, to give him a little break. We've talked about a lot in past years, keeping TJ fresh and having a outside linebacker rotation so that he can be more effective when he's in the game. And they've done a lot to address that this year with Marcus Golden and Nick Herbig. But today they didn't seem to have it at all. And I don't know if they were tired from traveling from Vegas to California back to Houston, and the struggles that we know they had with their plane coming back from having to make that emergency landing in Kansas City this past week. The Steelers should have been able to feast on that Texans offensive line with Kendrick Green starting at left guard, They've had to do a lot of shuffling with the injuries they've had. And even with that situation, the Steelers' interior defensive line wasn't able to do anything. Montravius Adams coming off of a big game last week. Quiet today, so was Ogunjobi. Keanu Benton, other than that forced fumble, didn't hear his name much. All day it was just, mother, may I take 25 giant steps forward out there, and the Steelers were more than happy to oblige. Jumping over to the offense, obviously the first place to go is the play calling, and I understand the criticisms, and I'm starting to have questions of my own. Whenever they start to run it successfully, they take it one step too far, do it one too many times, and it gets blown up. It puts them all behind the sticks. They can never get back on track, and it just ruins drives. We've been talking about this with the Steelers for quite some time now, about being too predictable. Going back to last year when they played the Titans, it's the same plays. The Steelers came out again today running some of what worked last week, their gap schemes, the duo blocking, and they were stymied for it. And they, when stuff ended up working for them in the running game, it's because they went back to the zone game. Here's what I want to see Matt Canada call. Once he gets a couple of those successful zone plays, maybe a split zone in there, once it works a couple times, that's when you play action off of it. That's when you show that and then bring the jet sweep the other way and get everyone leaning one way, because they've been keying hard on the Steelers snap counts. The Steelers put a lot on tape about the stuff they like to show with their motions and the hints that we give defenses pre-snap. That's what play calling is all about. It's about establishing a baseline, about making rules, and then breaking your own rules to catch your opponent leaning the wrong way. And the Steelers sure do a good job of establishing those rules, and defenses are keying on it hard. The next step is breaking those rules, making them lean the wrong way, and then coming back the other way. And then, yoo-hoo, massive open space over here for George Pickens to catch and run in. That's the next step we need to see from the Steelers offense. I'm sure that's what Matt Canada is looking in the notebook for, the playbook for. And I think that's where we're going to see coming out next week against the Ravens with the guys that they have in their secondary. It's going to be a risky proposition trying to go air raid against them. In case you're wondering why I'm wearing a different shirt, it's because my tech glitch fell up and I got all sweaty and frustrated trying to figure it out, so I had to go take a shower. But as I was saying, it seems premature to speculate about what this offense is going to look like next week against the Ravens in light of the potentially serious left knee injury that Kenny Pickett sustained today. Perhaps the bleakest takeaway from this fairly dark football Sunday for Steelers Nation is that we may be looking down the barrel of a Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph quarterback controversy. If this knee ends up being severe for Pickett and we have to piecemeal together a season between those two guys, it's going to be a long season, especially if we can't count on the defense to put the team on their back the way they were getting gashed today. It looks like it's going to be back to the 2019 game model of win with your defense, hope your offense doesn't lose it for you. All we can do right now is wait for the news on Pickett, and if you happen to be of the praying persuasion, I wouldn't be against that either. Suffice it to say, the Super Bowl window got a little skinnier today, a little bit closer to shut, but it's still very possible for this defense to, if they play a little bit better with TJ and Alex bookending it, a very good defensive line that's on the upswing. If JPJ can come in for Pat Pete and play effectively, which is a move that's far overdue. Levi Wallace on the other side, I know you get bit by him fairly often, but I think he's a guy who does a little bit more biting for you than you end up getting bit by him. Of course, Minka on the back end, Neal and KZ as a strong safety. That's still probably your weakest link. If they can get back in the lab and find out something that works and get the chemistry back together defensively, they can still have something here. And it may not be Super Bowl, but it could still be a successful season for Mike Tomlin and the gang. I think the key to that is a defensive identity, and it starts with really locking it down with the pass rush and figuring out what went wrong with your outside linebackers today. That would be my first order of business if I were Terrell Austin jumping into the tape tomorrow. We've known for years and years that the Steelers team coming out of that 3-4 defense is so much of their success is keyed by those outside linebackers and their ability to get after quarterbacks. And when they're getting it, they look like an elite unit. When they're not getting it, they just get, they get gashed up and down by the Texans. And again, you have to give CJ Stroud his props, but it shouldn't have been as much as it was. They're going to have to find an identity awful quick because they thought it was the zone run. They went away from it for the Vegas game, and it worked for them. And then coming back in the Houston game, the duo stuff and the gap schemes were completely stoned. They went back to the zone run and had some success, but just have to mix it up more and being more varied and not being too reliant on one or the other. They have to not be afraid to go to the changeup, to borrow a baseball metaphor. Like, your identity can be the zone run, but don't be afraid to throw a gap scheme in there every now and then. You're neither a great zone nor a gap running team. You're not going to have great success if you devote all your resources to one or the other. If you mix it up and you keep the defenses guessing, that gives you a little bit bump in, it makes it a little bit easier for you. So just be a little bit more varied on offense, on defense, have to be more disciplined, especially in the backside of those runs. The leaking out the backside, that needs to stop. That's the most annoying thing of the entire Steelers season. Consistently, guys over pursuing and leaving their gap and giving them a lane to leak out the backside for these explosive gains on what should have been, stops in the backfield. It's all over the tape. The players are going to see it. The coaches are going to burn into their brains, and I hope they're not going to keep making the same mistakes. And again, back to Kenny Pickett throwing that over the middle. It seems like he throws into double coverage an awful lot. I hope that he figures something out there. Again, the offensive line isn't doing him much favors. He seems scared out there a lot, and I wanted to get on him oftentimes in this game for leaving clean pockets, and then they show the replay, and it's like, well, actually there was pressure up the middle. He should have flushed on that one. So Dan Moore was lost early in this game. James Daniels didn't play at all. Nate Herbig wasn't what he was advertised. Broderick Jones, still obviously a learning curve there. On both sides of the ball today, the Steelers were just owned in the trenches. Most significantly, the weakest link, I think, was Mason Cole. It's been brought up in the past about the analytics of him being one of the weakest rated centers in the league, and on a couple of replays today, they showed him being thrown in the backfield, blowing up some running plays. I mean, not that the rest of the line is that strong, but if you're going to make improvements, that would be where to start. I don't know if Broderick Jones has demanded that it's his time already. I think if Dan Moore is back and ready, it's still his job to lose. He hasn't lost it yet, and Broderick Jones hasn't won the job yet. So, there's a couple injuries there to keep an eye on. Also, Patrick Freiermuth with the hamstring. The Steelers have a lot to figure out all over the field. Us as Steelers fans, let's try not to stress about it, and let's try to have a good week, and let's just have faith. Let's have hope that when we see them again next weekend, it looks a little bit better, because if it doesn't, it's going to be, it's hard to do two of these in a row.